I'll wait for that to pop up. There we
There you
go.
go.
All right, so welcome everybody for the end of week one of the 2023 legislative session. As I was just saying, most of you heard we did have some movement on some bills this week, and I think some of them are lined up to be passed fairly quickly. So this first wave will go, and we've got some more coming behind it that came out in the last few days. So I'll briefly mention some of those. Not all of them are in the report as of yet. We're working on it to see exactly what they do. And CLGR, our legislative committee, meets after these two calls on Friday mornings, and we go over the new stuff and see where we're at. But so last week, that's what happened with these first two bills. These are House Bill 99 and Senate Bill 266. These are the higher education bills dealing with the universities and their use of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, and it really goes in deep on the universities. It would affect the tenure for the professors, who gets to choose, who gets to hire professors, a lot of different things. So it's a much bigger bill than just our issue. Our issue is that ABET had in their October meeting had proposed that a DEI program be included in the criteria for accreditation for the universities. And if our universities are prevented from doing that by state law, obviously that creates a problem. I spoke last week with a fellow that handles governmental affairs for NCEES, I think it is, the people that are involved in the licensing and the education on that. So they're watching it very closely. But basically what was decided there is, this bill's a little bit big. We think other industries are going to be affected by this. There's certainly going to be other states. I think there's 8 states that have already passed laws related to DEI. I don't know if they go as far as Florida does as far as the universities, but in 25 states that are considering those types of laws. So it's going to be a bigger deal. My understanding now is I initially thought last week that when ABET meets here, I believe it's next week now, that they would pass this requirement for the criteria, but it doesn't appear, at least from what the gentleman told me, that it's even on their agenda. So hopefully they're kind of sitting back and waiting and see what some of these states do. Because it's going to be an issue moving forward once this passes. I don't think there's any way to stop this from passing. They may tweak it a little bit. I believe it's the House bill that's going to be up next on Monday afternoon. And so somebody had said there was a strike all to that, but there's no amendment that's been filed to it yet. So this one's going to pass in whatever form they land on, because it's just part of DeSantis's whole program. And so we'll keep an eye on this. I'll probably drop it to the bottom of the report, just so if as anything happens, we can report that to you. But a lot of moving parts on this one at this time. So Laura, you can move on to the next couple. If anybody has any questions, just raise your hand. And we'll take them as we get them, or you can put them in chat if you wish to do that. Okay, Laura, we've got somebody raising their hand.
Yes, we do. Nicholas, go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, Alan. This is Nick Carpathy, and I'm with the Government Relations Committee at ASCE, and we were recently reached out to about these two bills by the society level in our organization, and they're looking to see if between our teams we'd be willing to come up with some sort of statement or position on these bills relative to ABET.
At this time, our legislative committee and stuff has voted no. We're just going to monitor it. We're not going to say anything about it.
Okay.
Saying something isn't going to change DeSantis's mind. As a matter of fact, my fear there would be that ABET would become his target, because he would simply turn around and say, well, ABET doesn't need to be doing this. This doesn't have anything to do with engineers. It doesn't make engineers any better, doesn't make that bridge any better. And, whether you agree with that or not, and I'm not saying that I do, I'm just saying that that's what he will say. And ABET could quickly become his target. Just the same way, a few weeks ago when they had to deal with the advanced placement program on African American history. He went right after the College Board and said, well, the College Board does the AP programs, and he said, well, we don't need them, and so they quickly changed what they were doing. So that one kind of ended. But he's like him or hate him, he's serious about this stuff. So. But I'd be glad, as we move along here, if ASCE, I mean, I would appreciate knowing if ASCE is going to do something like that, just so I know. I mean, I'm not gonna
Yeah,
try to tell ASCE what to do, but just so I would know that that was going in there.
absolutely. I'll keep you in the loop on that.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Alan
Yasi,
Yossi also
you
has a question.
go ahead.
Good morning. And out of curiosity, what is ASC's position on that?
We are still formulating something. This is, we were asked by the society just a couple of days ago, so we're convening internally to see how we're going to address it. In general, we're trying to take a immediate stance in terms of wanting to stand by with the society's policies that include diversity, equity, inclusion, but not necessarily try to gather more attention or to necessarily fight the bill, just rather have a statement that kind of doesn't follow the principles that are being proposed.
Alan, it's something that I think we all need to discuss. We need to be careful with this and not just take positions on it, okay?
Yeah, at this point, we're not taking any position on it. We're just monitoring it and seeing where it goes. Just as a little background, my understanding is that ASCE actually made the motion with ABET to include this in the criteria. I don't have any definitive proof of that other than what I've been told. So
Yeah, I'm not sure of that, but I do know the society has been increasing the publicity of their policies around that. They have a program called JEDI, which I believe also adds justice to the beginning of it. So we'll be coordinating with them, and we'll let you know what positions formally we take, if any.
right. Okay. All right, well, let me move on real quick here. The sovereign immunity bills are the 401 and 604. Those haven't moved since last week. I keep them up near the top, though, because the CEIs, especially in the transportation world, this would affect them and their liability, because it would increase the liability for governments that work under sovereign immunity. And because CEIs act as an agent of the governmental entity that they're working for, this could catch them up in it. There's probably some other examples too, but CEI is the big one. But again, that one hasn't moved. We've put in our, that this affects us. This seems to me to be one of the bills coming from the legislature on, aimed at local governments. And sometimes they don't realize they're catching other people up in their net. So we've let them know what it would, the problems that we would have with it. And we'll keep monitoring this one. And if we need to get involved, we will.
Peter has
All
a
right, Laura.
question.
I'm
Alan,
sorry.
Peter has a question.
Okay. Hey, Peter.
Peter Moore.
Hey, Alan. So now I was just gonna say, my insurance broker is out to 6 different underwriters she works with, but the preliminary information is that yes, there will be a decrease in the number of providers for insurance in the state of Florida for professional liability, and we're looking at probably somewhere between a 20 to 30% increase in rates if it jumps from the current level up to the 5 million level that was being threatened. So if it was a smaller increase, to 250,000 to 500,000, that's something that might be able to be, put in as part of the as part of inflation and everything else. But if it jumps to 7 figures right away, it's going to be a real issue. I'll have a formal white paper with all the summary of all the underwriters who are coming back from that. But I did follow up on that, and I did have a conversation with my broker this week.
Okay, great. Appreciate that, Peter. All right, Laura.
I'm on CS for CS, House Bill
Oh,
85.
My bad.
That's okay.
These are, as you can see by the red favorable lines there, these two are moving. We've got one more, well, actually one more committee in the House, and on the Senate bill, it passed its final committee this week, and so it's headed to the full Senate. This is the one that reduces the statute of repose from 10 years to 7 years, and then puts the trigger date as either the temporary certificate of occupancy or the CO itself or a couple other things. But speaking with people, the majority of the time where this statute of repose is involved, it's going to be when that temporary certificate of authority is issued that the clock would start running on the statute of repose. So this one's one we've talked about before. This is, they've been working on this for at least 2 years, and they've got it kind of lined up. And you can see that when they passed the final committee this week on Senate Bill 360, there were no amendments. That's the bill they want, and then it's worded the way they want. And I think they still have to do a couple things to line up the House bill with it. And they'll probably do that in the Judiciary Committee there, and get it position to get through the House, and then it'll head to the governor. So I think we'll see that one continue to move quickly and probably be done with it here in the next couple of weeks. All right, the condos. This is the bill that's the repair version, I guess, of what we did last year. But this is all in response to the Surfside thing. Actually, we don't have a whole lot in there, except now that, Laura, if you could scroll on down so we can see the House bill. This House Bill 1395 was just put out this week. As last week, we didn't have a House companion for the Senate bill. But this one has come out. This would allow general contractors and building code administrators or building inspectors to perform the phase 1 inspections, and that's just not in keeping with our recommendations to the legislature. And really, there's a few problems that we have with this. One, a lot of the people out there that are making the decisions, unfortunately, don't understand the difference between an inspection on a building that's under construction where you can see everything, and an inspection on an existing building where you can't see everything. And there's people that specialize in that, so we need to keep it that as tight as possible. We would actually like the qualifications to be stricter, except that we have this problem of nobody really knows how many structural engineers there are out there that do this kind of work. And so that's where this is coming from. People are, oh, we don't have enough engineers, so we need to let other people do it. And that's not the way we go. There's a couple of ways we can fix that we're talking with them about, and it's that would be number one. Just the deadline right now is at the end of 2024 for the condos to have the phase 1 inspection and to have their reserves fully funded. And so that date could be extended. We'd rather not do that. Or in the Senate bill, there's language that basically says they have to be under contract by the end of 2024. That way, if there's not enough structural engineers to do it and they're having trouble finding them, as long as they can find one in the next, year and 3 quarters and get under contract, then that would do it. So I think we like that a lot better. But we'll just have to see how it develops. There is one of the bills I mentioned that's not on the report that's just come out. Let me find it here real quick. Deals with condos as well. Actually, it deals with, the title of the bill is resilience districts. And the main part of the bill is it would aim to set up these resilience districts where there would be funding for condos and all kinds of other things, for climate change, for sea level rise, for the typical things we talk about in resiliency. But they've added in that there could be monies there for the condo associations to help them get to their full level of funding for their reserves. We've got a lot of condos out there, about 50% of them that have no reserves at all. And you know, they're obviously screaming and yelling because that would be a big assessment on their tenants to try to get it fully funded by the end of next year. So I don't know. Again, we're looking at these that have just popped up, and I don't know, you know, exactly, you know, how that would work, or there's not a lot of details in the bill, but I'll probably have more to report on with that next week. But as far as this House Bill 1395, it's the part about the general contractors and the building code the building code officials being able to do these inspections that concerns us. And then also they're having trouble telling the difference between the inspection that's required when they do a reserve study. There's firms that do that, and some condos do them every year, some do them every 3 to 5. Then the law now calls for them to be done every 10 years, at least every 10 years. And so what that is basically is a financial report to tell the condo association how much they need to be setting back in reserves. And so they do a walkthrough just to see if they see anything wrong with the building. It's not a structural inspection. It's looking to see if the roof's leaking, or, you know, anything that they might see that's going to need to be fixed. And that's not what we were talking about. We're talking about, you know, a structural inspection to make sure the building's not going to fall down. But the legislature is confusing these two. So the House bill would also require that every 10 years, when this reserve study is being done, that the milestone inspection be done by an engineer. And, you know, basically what you're doing when you do that is you're saying you've got to have the milestone inspection every 10 years, which is not what the rest of the law says, which says every 25 or 30 years, depending on where you are. So there's some confusion with these, and we're working to get that cleaned up and get something out so that the condominium associations can move forward. Obviously, they have big problems now with property insurance. They realize that they're going to have to do something. So the whole idea of the inspections is not being challenged. It's just how you get it paid for, and, you know, how do you get it done. And I think a lot of the condo associations are using the fact that we don't know how many structural engineers do this work. I think they're using that as a way to stall. And they're using the reserve issue as a way to stall. But, you know, in the end, they're not going to be able to keep stalling, or something else is going to fall down. So Laura, we can move on. DOT bills. As we mentioned last week, the phase design build, previously called progressive design build, was taken out of this bill. These bills last in their first committee stops. So we're watching these bills. They put on some electric vehicle stuff at the second stop with the Senate bill in committee this past week, and it still isn't something that, you know, we're opposing or supporting. There's good stuff in it. If anybody asks, we're going to say we support it, because there's the idea of cost savings during the project being split, you know, between the department and the road builders and the engineers. So that would be a good thing. But again, we're kind of monitoring these bills, and see how they move. They could, last year this bill became a train. That could happen again. And what I mean by that, for those that don't know, you get a bill that's it looks like it's gonna pass. Everybody in the world wants to put their amendments on it, and sometimes they do. And this bill actually died last year because they put a bunch of stuff at the very end of session about the Miami-Dade Expressway Authority, or whatever they call it today. They put a bunch of that stuff on there, and the Senate president just nixed the bill right then and there. But we'll watch it just to see how it goes. Not a bad bill. All this stuff, the phase design build and a lot of other things are going to go into the budget bill. So those are usually done closer to the end of session. So we'll be watching those and trying to make sure we keep all of the governor's proposals for additional funding and whatnot, that those remain in the bill till the end. And then we have, yeah,
Sorry, Scott has a question.
sure.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. So, Alan, did I hear you right that they took anything referencing design build out of the transportation bill so far?
Right. Yeah, the only thing that was in there was that what they called in this bill progressive design build.
Right.
When it shows up in the budget bill, it will be called phase design build. But it'll have the basically the same criteria that goes with it.
But any requirements have been removed from this bill? Did I hear that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's the authority for DOT to use progressive or phase design build. So I mean, that's what it does, just allows them to do it, and that will wind up in the budget bill.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. And then the last one I have here on the report is the fire sprinkler system projects. Obviously, this is a small group of our membership, but an important group nonetheless. And the House bill, as you can see, has moved. It's completed both of its committees, and it still contains language in there that would allow contractors to design additions or expansion of a fire sprinkler system. That's the part we object to. It's got other things in there, other provisions that simplify the permitting process, which we're fine with for them. But the idea of allowing contractors to design expansions, we're not even really opposed to, moving the sprinkler heads. If you're putting in a new wall or something and you need to move them, they can already do that. They're trying to expand that a little bit too, as to the number of heads that are being moved. But when they start to, expand the system and include more pipe and all that kind of stuff, that we feel like that needs to be done by an engineer. John Johnson, I don't know if he's on the phone, had a meeting with the House sponsor yesterday. The Senate bill, which is being done by Senator Perry, he's never had that provision in his bill, and it seems pretty strong that he's not going to put it in. So the House sponsor said she would go talk to him and see what he's wanting to do, and which amazes me. People have the same bill and they haven't talked to each other. She's going to go talk to him, and I think he's going to get that taken care of and get that provision out of that bill. In which case, then you're watching to see if the people pushing it. This is where you find out what they really wanted. Did they want the simplified permitting process, or do they want to be able to design these expansions of the system? So sometimes the bills will just die when you take their favorite provision out of it. Is John on the call?
No, sir.
Okay. Okay, well, that was kind of the synopsis of what he said. So anyway, let me go through just a couple more that I see coming. Peter Moore, did you see the bill I sent you last night on contract liability?
Yeah, I started taking a look at it now, and I haven't had a chance to finish it yet, though.
Okay. What it looks like is it would require that in a contract with government entities, that the maximum amount of liability for the contractor or engineer would have to be included in the contract. I don't see that hurts, but I don't know that it helps that much, because they can put whatever number I guess they want in there. But anyway, we can chat about that a little bit more in the legislative committee, Peter, and kind of see where we want to go with that, if that's something to support. And I mentioned the resilience districts. That's the one we'll have, the deal with the dollars for condos and their reserves funds. And then finally, there's a different transportation bill that came out. JW has already gotten with Will Watts over at DOT, and they said, yeah, they're supportive of this bill. Doesn't do a whole lot to us or for us, except there's provisions in there that would give FDOT more money for training and education for their employees. And since we do a lot of that for them, it could help, the organization of ACEC and FES in the long run. So, we'll take a little better look at that. But so far, there doesn't seem to be a reason to oppose that. In addition to
It
that,
also allows, Alan,
uh-huh.
it also allows them to pay for dues for professional societies. So as well as license renewal. So I think from that perspective, we need to support it, obviously.
Sure.
A lot more DOT members in FES.
I will, I'll see if I can get an amendment on there that provides dues money for FES membership. I'm teasing, of course. All right, thanks, JW. So that's really what I have. There's probably, 3 or 4 dozen more bills that I have on my list. But most of them aren't moving or they've just been filed and we're looking into what they're doing. So our list will expand and contract as we move along here. We'll be taking some things off the report and putting new things on. So each week should be something a little bit different. So we still got a few minutes. We did adjust the times here just because, we're right at 8:58 right now. So we wanted to give a few extra minutes before Jeff does his presentation with the environmental bin, water bills and that. And there is some movement on that and, what's going on as far as the rule coming out of DEP and the ratification of that. So anybody that's interested in that, join us at 9:15. Otherwise, I'd be glad to take any questions or we can wrap this up.
This is Shaheen. Do you think we can add DEP or other state agency to that FDOT one for additional fees for dues and other things?
Well, I believe Will told JW that it's DOT's bill, so it would be kind of up to them if they wanted to include DEP, but it's a good idea.
Just say.
I'll ask, but I doubt that DOT would, there's other stuff in there that they want. So I'd hate to add too much to that and cause a problem with the bill.
I understand, but I just think if we're going to do that just for one state agency, all the other state agencies should be included in that. But hey, who am I to say?
That's a good idea. We'll follow up on it and see. Our water conference that we had started a few years ago, we kind of did it, modeled it after our transportation conference, and it was growing. And then DEP changed administrations and they quit participating, and it kind of died on the vine. So I'd love to see it happen with them as well. Anybody else? All right. Well, I certainly appreciate your time. And for those that join us at 9:15, we'll talk then. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.